Imagine piloting a massive cargo aircraft weighing over 400,000 pounds, flying just 500 feet above the endless Pacific Ocean, attempting to deliver a 50-pound package to a moving submarine that appears no larger than a pencil line on the vast blue canvas below. One miscalculation means 3 years of meticulous planning crumbles into disaster. Hit the submarine directly, and you've just accidentally bombed a $2.1 billion nuclear asset. The margin for error? Absolutely zero. Welcome to one of the most daring military aviation operations ever attempted. This extraordinary mission began 6 hours earlier on a crisp October morning in 2020. At Hickam Air Force Base in Hawaii, the massive engines of a C-17 Globemaster roared to life, their thunderous power echoing across the tarmac as 4 Pratt and Whitney turbofan engines prepared to push this flying behemoth into the dawn sky. Inside the cargo bay sat what would either revolutionize submarine logistics forever or prove that some ambitious ideas work better in PowerPoint presentations than in real life. The mission parameters seemed deceptively straightforward on paper. Fly 800 miles northwest across the Pacific, rendezvous with the USS Henry M. Jackson, drop off critical supplies, and return home safely. But this was no ordinary supply run. Their target was a 560-foot nuclear submarine that had been deliberately drifting submerged for 6 hours, maintaining complete radio silence while powerful Pacific currents pushed her miles from any predictable position. Finding a black submarine in the endless blue Pacific, when your search area covers roughly the same territory as Russia, presents challenges that would make finding a needle in New York City seem trivial by comparison. The submarine had been intentionally random in her drift patterns, an essential operational security measure that prevents adversaries from tracking predictable movement patterns. While excellent for maintaining stealth, this strategy created a nightmare scenario for anyone attempting to locate her with a cargo aircraft. As the C-17 approached the submarine's last known coordinates, sophisticated maritime search radar began painting surface contacts across a 250 nautical mile radius. The radar operator's screen came alive with cascading green blips that resembled digital rain, each representing a potential contact that could be wave returns, floating debris, marine life, or the submarine they desperately needed to find. Distinguishing a submarine's minimal surface profile from the countless false returns created by ocean waves requires the kind of pattern recognition that comes only from years of experience scanning hostile waters. Navigation over the vast Pacific strips away every comfort of continental flying. There are no VOR navigation stations, no familiar landmarks, no visual references except endless blue water that looks identical whether you're 100 miles from Hawaii or 1,000 miles out. While the flight management computer knew their position within 30 feet thanks to GPS technology, that precision becomes meaningless when your target has been floating like an underwater rubber duck for the past 6 hours. The Henry M. Jackson's last known position had been accurate at midnight, but by now she could be anywhere within a 50-square-mile search box. 400 miles from Hawaii and approaching the designated search area, the navigator finally received the submarine's first communication since diving. The burst transmission lasted exactly 1.3 seconds, just long enough to pass updated coordinates, showing that the Henry M. Jackson had drifted 4.2 nautical miles northeast of her planned position. While not unusual for a submarine maintaining station without using engines, this drift completely destroyed their initial search plan. The crew quickly recalculated their approach while the radar operator expanded his search pattern. Inside the cargo bay, the test package sat secured with basic tie-down straps, representing 50 pounds of experimental optimism wrapped in waterproof seals and wearing a flotation device that made it look like a box preparing for vacation. The simplicity was entirely deliberate in this high-stakes operation. Complex systems have countless ways to fail, but foam floats reliably. At precisely 9:15 in the morning, the radar finally painted what they had been hunting for. A weak, intermittent contact appeared exactly where the submarine had reported she would be, barely distinguishable from sea clutter, but showing the consistent return pattern of something solid riding the ocean swells. The contact would disappear for several radar sweeps as waves washed over the submarine's hull, then reappear stronger as the crew adjusted their trim. The pilot banked toward the contact, while everyone aboard contemplated the unprecedented nature of what they were about to attempt. Nobody had ever tried resupplying a submarine with a strategic airlifter before, and there were excellent reasons why. The C-17 was designed to deliver heavy equipment, like tanks to prepared runways, not precision packages to submarines bobbing in ocean swells. However, if this experimental operation succeeded, it would fundamentally change how submarines operate worldwide. Finding the needle was merely step one of this complex challenge. Now they had to thread it with surgical precision. The C-17 began what pilots diplomatically describe as an uncomfortable descent toward 500 feet above the Pacific. At this dangerously low altitude, the massive transport stops flying like a conventional aircraft and starts wallowing like a 412,000-pound aluminum whale struggling with serious control issues. The pilot pulled the throttles back and immediately discovered why flight manuals strongly discourage low-altitude operations over water. The aircraft responded to control inputs like a dump truck attempting to compete in the Indianapolis 500. Ground effect turned the final approach into an exhausting wrestling match with fundamental physics. When you fly something the size of a C-17 this close to water, the air compressed between the massive wing and ocean surface cannot escape quickly enough, creating unpredictable cushions of lift that make precise control nearly impossible. 1 second you are descending smoothly toward your target, then suddenly you are ballooning upward, like someone had shoved an invisible trampoline under your aircraft. Below them, the USS Henry M materialized as 560 feet of menacing black steel cutting through Pacific swells with purposeful grace. Her hull, specifically designed to slip through water with minimal resistance, presented a target roughly the width of a 2-lane highway. Factor in that both platforms were moving independently. The ocean was doing its own unpredictable thing, and suddenly, this military operation resembled trying to play darts during a major earthquake. The submarine crew faced their own unique challenges in maintaining a precise surface position. This delicate operation required a complex dance between ballast tanks, trim systems, and just enough propulsion to counteract current without creating a telltale wake that would scream submarine location to any watching satellites. The crew continuously adjusted trim by pumping water between tanks to keep the hull level, while Pacific swells attempted to turn their boat into the world's most expensive seesaw. Meanwhile, a rigid-hull inflatable boat launched from the submarine with 4 sailors who definitely had not signed up for this particular adventure when they joined the Navy. Their 7-meter boat handled the swells admirably, but positioning for package recovery while avoiding both the submarine and a low-flying cargo plane required the kind of spatial awareness usually reserved for advanced video games. Radio coordination between 3 separate platforms pushed the absolute limits of what humans can accomplish with voice communications alone. The submarine passed heading and speed updates every 30 seconds. The inflatable boat crew reported their position relative to both larger platforms while bouncing through swells that made accurate reports incredibly challenging. Meanwhile, the C-17 crew calculated approach angles while fighting an aircraft that seemed determined to do anything except fly straight and level. The pilot discovered that maintaining exactly 120 knots indicated airspeed felt like trying to hold a specific number on a rapidly spinning slot machine. Too fast, and the package would overshoot the recovery zone by hundreds of meters. Too slow, and the C-17's computer would start screaming warnings about approaching stall speed, because nothing says catastrophic day like stalling a strategic airlifter over the Pacific Ocean. The sweet spot was exactly 120 knots, plus or minus absolutely nothing. At 500 feet altitude, even minor turbulence felt like riding a mechanical bull designed by sadistic engineers. The aircraft's fly-by-wire system, programmed for high-altitude efficiency, offered minimal assistance for this type of demanding low-level flying. It was like asking a Formula One race car to compete in a tractor-pull competition. Sure, it had an engine and wheels, but that was where any useful similarities ended. The submarine passed beneath them on a crucial practice run, allowing everyone to verify timing and coordination protocols. The loadmaster peered through the small crew door window, watching 18,750 tons of submarine slide by close enough to count individual people on deck. The sight drove home just how precisely they needed to execute this unprecedented operation. Miss the designated drop zone, and best-case scenario meant the package would be lost forever in the Pacific depths. Worst-case scenario involved proving why nobody had attempted this before by dropping 50 pounds of test equipment directly onto a nuclear submarine, creating an international incident that would require extensive explanations to very unhappy admirals and congressional oversight committees. Everything depended entirely on the next pass, when 3 years of meticulous planning would meet 5 critical minutes of flawless execution. The C-17 lined up for its final approach run, while the submarine maintained heading 285 degrees at exactly 6 knots. This speed was fast enough to maintain steering control, but slow enough to minimize the target's motion and provide a stable platform for the critical drop. The inflatable boat positioned itself 200 meters off the submarine's starboard beam, close enough for quick package recovery, yet far enough to avoid becoming collateral damage if things went sideways catastrophically. The loadmaster took his position at the crew door, with the test package secured by quick-release hardware that was essentially a glorified carabiner, with the weight of history hanging on its simple mechanism. Through the small window, he could see the submarine, while mentally calculating drop physics that no computer was programmed to help with. This was pure seat-of-the-pants mathematics, eyeballing the precise lead angle needed to put 50 pounds of experimental hope into a moving target zone roughly the size of a basketball court. Inside the C-17, the pilots fought desperately to maintain parameters that felt impossibly precise for an aircraft of this massive size. Airspeed had to be exactly 120 knots, not 119, definitely not 121. Altitude must remain precisely 500 feet, not 490, absolutely not 510. The heading had to match the submarine's course exactly, because any crossing angle would multiply the difficulty of an already seemingly impossible problem exponentially. As they entered the final approach, the loadmaster performed mental calculations that would challenge a physics professor. The package would fall 500 feet, taking approximately 5.57 seconds to reach the water surface. During that critical time, the submarine would travel roughly 15 meters forward, the wind would push the package 20 meters eastward, and the aircraft's forward velocity would add another 344 meters to the complex equation. He needed to release at exactly the perfect point to combine all those vectors into one successful splash within the recovery zone. The submarine reported steady on course and ready for drop, while the inflatable boat confirmed they were in position for immediate recovery. The C-17 crew acknowledged while continuing to fight an aircraft that seemed absolutely determined to do anything except fly straight and level at 500 feet. In 30 seconds, they would discover whether the United States military had just invented a revolutionary new method to keep submarines at sea indefinitely, or if they were about to explain to admirals why their brilliant idea had ended with a submarine limping back to port for damage repairs. The C-17 entered its final approach as the submarine slid into perfect view beneath them. The loadmaster tracked her progress while his experienced brain processed angles, speeds, and distances in real time. He had completed thousands of cargo drops throughout his career, but never one where missing meant explaining to Congress how he had accidentally bonked a nuclear submarine with experimental equipment. The loadmaster counted down his internal timing. 3, 2, 1. He pulled the release mechanism. 50 pounds of experimental optimism was pushed out of the aircraft, beginning its crucial journey toward either complete validation or a very uncomfortable investigation. The package fell with the aerodynamic grace of a tumbling cinder block, rotating slightly as wind resistance fought gravity for control of its trajectory. The pilots maintained their heading for several precious seconds, while everyone strained to observe the critical impact point. Splash! The package struck water approximately 150 meters ahead of the submarine and 1,000 meters to starboard. Not perfect by textbook standards, but well within acceptable recovery range for the mission parameters. The flotation collar immediately popped the container back to the surface, where it bobbed like the world's most important pool toy awaiting rescue. The inflatable boat crew sprang into immediate action, their engines roaring as they raced toward the floating target. They successfully recovered the package and stowed it safely aboard their vessel, completing a mission that would have seemed impossible just hours earlier. The implications of this successful test extended far beyond the United States military's ability to Amazon Prime delivery to submarines. Nuclear submarines could now stay on station significantly longer, operate effectively in areas without friendly ports, and receive critical supplies without compromising their strategic position or revealing their location to potential adversaries. The most survivable leg of America's nuclear triad had just become even more capable and strategically valuable. This successful operation opened entirely new possibilities for submarine warfare, logistics, and strategic deterrence that military planners are still exploring today. The precision, coordination, and sheer audacity required to pull off this mission demonstrated the incredible capabilities that emerge when cutting-edge technology meets exceptional human skill and determination.